Welcome, Raad Ghantous.
Uh yeah, just need to get some water in me. It's getting hot out there.
Yeah,
Is this still 2020? I mean, can we fit more stuff in this year or what?
I think it's 1920 all over again. We're fighting the same battles we fought 100 years ago here.
It's more like 1820, my friend. What are you
1820,
talking about? We
yeah.
haven't learned shit, right? But you know what? It's fascinating. It's fascinating. In the midst of all this stuff, to give credit to one thing, we seem to still be adaptable, right? We still seem
Yeah.
to be able to be agile and adaptable, and whether we're doing it with a song and a skip in our step because we're thinking there's opportunity that's down the road here that is coming out of this crisis, or there's maybe potentially some order out of this crisis. We or we're basically huffing and puffing and saying this is bullshit and I don't really want to deal with this. We're still adapting. Like it's kind of funny, right? It's like whether you're upset or you're angry or you're happy or you're sad, everybody seems to be adapting, and every day the sun still comes up and we still get a move on.
And every
But
day things change. It's a moving target.
that was where I was going with this. I think part of the thing that is the most stressful, and I've got somebody lined up actually to talk about exactly this issue on an upcoming episode of the Raad Life, is there's a ton of stress. I mean, it's almost like post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yes.
and there's no end in sight for it.
In fact, I wonder that if 6 months down the road, 3 months down the road, at some point that we aren't going to have a realization that we've all been through a stressful case, and there will be cases of some kind of post-stress, some sort of delayed reaction to this.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, it, it's it's one of those things where there's no consistency, and I
No.
think that's biggest part of this whole problem from day one. That there's no consistency in messaging, there's no trust source because, and you've
Right.
heard me say this again, this before, and people who follow me on social media, this is not going to be a surprise for them. People are befuddled. There's a word we don't use all the time, right?
Yeah.
The people that are befuddled about the fact that um, we are, you know, scared. We're confused. We are afraid. Okay, we're afraid. And there's people that go like, "Well, you gotta stop being a scaredy cat. Get over your fear. Like, what are you being afraid about? There's no basis to any of this stuff. It's just another flu, whatever, right?" I'm like, yes, but here's the deal, boys and girls. When you spend the last 20 years, 30 years basically weaponizing and politicizing fear for the benefit of either party, and I'm not, nobody's not guilty here. Both are guilty of doing this. Okay? You are empowering that fear over people because you figure, if I can scare them and I sound like I've got the solution, then they're going to vote for me,
Or vote
right?
against the other guy.
Or vote against the other guy if I scare them with the other guy. Well, here comes this thing after you've conditioned the population to fear. Here comes this thing that you have no control over. I mean, you gotta love the karmic, just
Yeah.
irony of this whole thing, right?
And fear
I
isn't the right reaction. Fear is it's not anybody can do their own thing.
it
We
was
need a
it was the right
collective.
reaction. It was the right reaction when you feared the Democrat or feared the Republican or feared the Mexican or feared the illegal or feared the homeless. It was not long ago before that
Right.
Orange County wasn't fearing the homeless. Like was it last summer? That it's like every
Yeah.
summer we get. Hey, I wonder what the fear this season is going to be.
Yeah. Right. The fear of
It's
the
like
weak.
the fear of the week. And so now here comes this thing that we can't get a handle on. It still blows my mind that 5 months later we don't have clarity, we don't have understanding. I mean, we got to be the dumbest people on the planet.
We don't
Five,
even
six
have a
months.
consensus as to what's happened and how to fix it.
How do we go through something like this for 5 months? 5 months. Whether you believe it dramatically is true or you absolutely disbelieve it's true. How do we, after 5 months, still have the lack of clarity and understanding that we have?
Let's bring in your guests. I'll find out.
So I'm gonna the guests today are sort of they are people that are involved in both city council level and appropriately and timely for this episode, the school and educational level, because we're coming in on a new school year, and these things are now starting to permeate into kids and going back to school and safety in classrooms and etc. So without further ado, I will bring my guests in. Gentleman, first gentleman is Dr. Jose Moreno, who is no stranger to this show. in fact, prides himself on being the one that has been most in attendance as a guest on this show. And then Al Jabbar, who is a trustee. Jose is a council member in the city of Anaheim, and Al Jabbar is a trustee of the Anaheim Union High School District. And they are both people. I've been trying to get Al on for a while, so I'm going to bring them on, and we're going to find out from them how the heck it's been. Well,
Al's turned upside down. That's whole world's turned upside down. Yeah.
Yeah, I see Al's world is turned upside down. You know, and Jose is adapting. He's pivoting. He's
Trying to
creative.
follow.
Creative. You gotta adapt, man. You gotta adapt. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure. Jose, I'd say it's a pleasure to see you on the show for, but you've been on here so long. It's you might as well host the show at this point.
I'm still waiting on my check.
Oh yeah. By the way, Paul, I've been meaning to talk to you about the royalty.
Oh,
check
I'm supposed to be sending it to him? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It's good to be here.
It's great to see you, my friend. And Al, finally, man, it's been long enough, right? We're trying to get you on. So
I know. My apologies.
Talk about what
No,
Al
no.
went through today just to get on the show. He had a board meeting that ran from when, like 6 hours or something here today?
From 8 o'clock this morning. So it just ended like around 2:32. I think 2:30. Yeah.
And
Well,
the-
and
and
I
it's-
think congratulations are in order, right? You got a young one added to the family.
Because
right?
as soon as he got off
Right.
the board meeting, his wife said, you got to do one thing before you do anything else, new dad. You got to do what?
True. I had to give a bath to my little girl. So
There you
Jose,
go.
are you putting your hand up?
I'm clapping.
Oh, you're clapping. Okay. Well, you're an educator, so I thought that was like we're going through, in class rules and guidelines here. But no, okay.
So here's the question of the day.
Congratulations.
Here's the question to
Thank you,
pose to
thank
get everybody off. That's what Rod was saying in the intro here. We've had many crises in this country, from starting with the Great Depression and the Great Recession and the dot-com bust and 9/11 and all these things. And once we got over the shock that had happened, we started to come together as a people and agree what the problem was and what the solution was. There might be some debate one way or another, more of this or less of this, but we generally started to come together to tackle this problem. First crisis I've ever known of in my life where instead we've fragmented. We've totally fractured, not just along 2 lines, but 50 lines.
Well,
wide.
and let me add to that too, because I didn't mention that. It's fascinating to me, like just from a helicopter view, that after 5 months of going through this, right, it almost seems, at least in common knowledge, that we are no smarter, no wiser, no clearer on what it is that we're dealing with. At least as the person, regular Joe in the street, regular person who's looking for that clarity. They are not any less confused today than they were 5 months ago. And that in its own self is a fascinating situation. I've never experienced that before,
Yeah.
after this much time. So I mentioned in the opening that you gentlemen pretty much are involved at a policy level in your own sort of spheres. So how the heck has it been I haven't had a chance to talk to you guys since this thing started. How's it been in the last 5 months for you? Who wants to go first?
I'll let. Go ahead, Jose.
I'll defer to Al because I think that the school question and that they had to abruptly close the way they did, and by in my opinion as a parent and as an educator, did as good a job as you can do when being asked to shut down like that. So I'll defer to Al, and then I'll kind of work off of that with the city.
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and Al, by the way, I don't know that I have seen anybody at all that is criticizing how that happened. Like when we had to do it that first time, when it was the end of the last academic year, and everybody had to kind of hunker down and do that and switch to distance learning, and some were better prepared for it, some were not. I don't think anybody even till today is criticizing that.
Right. And I think part of it is because it's kids, right? And when it comes to our children, we want to be safe than sorry. And I think, just to take a look at the decision that we made at Anaheim Union High School District, once we figured out what the seriousness of the issue was, it was just like a switch went off. The superintendent came to us and said, this is a crisis mode. We as a board gave him the authority, do what's necessary. But at the same time, I think everybody knew the seriousness. If it were to if the virus were to take hold in a school setting, how dangerous it will be for our kids. So I think it was easy for us to do it. And I think you had a lot of parents and community members who didn't question, like you said, right?
There was
Now,
total
once it
consensus. There was
Right.
total consensus.
Was
yeah.
it something anybody had ever thought of or written a contingency plan for? Were there any emergency plans in place should a school need to shut down and move to distance learning, an earthquake, a pandemic, whatever? I don't know. Is this something ever discussed?
we do have plans, right? But none like this. I think we get ready for inevitable stuff, like when we heard about the whole shooting stuff happening all over the country. We put our kids through training, our teachers through training,
Right.
and we are kind of mentally set for that.
Mhm.
But I don't think anybody looked at a pandemic taking a hold of the system like this, the way it is, and the way we reacted to it. I mean, even when we jumped into going into distant learning, nobody complained about it.
Right.
Nobody wanted to do it because, it's the best thing to do is to have the kid in front of a classroom and have a live instructor in front. But I think we just adapted. We went on to looking at, hey, have we done this before? Fortunately for Anaheim Union High School District, we already had a model, so it was easy for us to come in and jump in and get on it. But at the same time, there was growing pains, right? You had to learn through certain things that were happening. I mean, we mobilized not only food distribution for our kids, but we mobilized in making sure that we give hotspots to our kids, Chromebooks to our kids, so that students who didn't have access to those type of equipment had the opportunity. Anaheim is in an area where you have a lot of economically disadvantaged kids. We had to take a look at those. It's not only Anaheim Union High School District, but also Anaheim Elementary, right? Magnolia Elementary. We have a lot of our feeder school districts. We have to really adapt and come in and make sure that we did what we could to analyze and figure out. Our technology department did a great job in making sure to assess who had internet access, who had equipment. If they didn't, we made them the priority. So it also goes with experience of, experienced administrators being at the helm of departments.
Mhm.
But at the same time, this was new to everyone. So,
Well, it's one of my favorite things that I've heard somebody say is, "It's my first pandemic. How about you?" Like, we're supposed to have it all dialed in. Well, last time I looked, this is my first pandemic. Maybe I'll get it better next time, right?
The second or third one.
But it is fascinating when you stop for a minute, because I hadn't even connected the dots, to be honest with you, until we started just talking. Is that when this and Jose you kind of started this, you primed the pump here. The first time around, we all got together. We all basically went ahead and did what needed to be done. In fact, it was almost mind-blowing how quickly we pivoted, how quickly we adapted
so
to make that happen.
right, Rad. I think, we're going down the line. I'll tell you this. When we got that information, we didn't look at it from a political lens. We did not look at it from an ideological lens.
Mm-hmm.
So initial reaction was, what do we do to safeguard our kids, right? And what do we do to safeguard our community? That was the first reaction. Once this has now gone on for 3, 4, 5 months, and of course, being in a political year with the presidential election, and the guy at the White House doesn't do any good, right?
Right.
I mean, he blows the trumpet, and then now you have people talking conspiracy theories, and that's where we are at right now.
No pun intended. Trump blows the trumpet. Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think, to your point, Al, not only was it only about the kids, I think it was also what is the least disruptive thing that we can do to actually finish off the year, right? I mean, and if you guys just kind of, if I can take you guys back for a minute, while this was going on, it almost seemed like there was a newfound appreciation for teachers and for school districts and for systems in place, because all of a sudden the parents who had been shielded from that firsthand experience of a full day of what it took to basically, care for their kids basically and educate their kids, now they had to basically see, they were seeing it firsthand at home. And there was a lot of people that I had conversation with. They were like, wow, like all of a sudden, instead of me basically picking at my teacher for not getting it right, I'm like, oh my God, how can I basically, raise you up even more? And it's probably a bit of that still around as a residual effect, but I thought we were going on a different path. So it's really fascinating that now we're looking at next year, and all of a sudden, this thing that was acceptable for 5 months ago, we're now basically nitpicking at it. And you called it, man. It is because when it first happened, we didn't politicize this thing. We didn't basically try to weaponize this thing. And this time around, that is exactly what's happening.
So
Yeah,
let me
I know
just
go ahead.
add one thing to it here. What would you have liked to have seen if we could replay this? If we go through this again, what would you like to see the county, the state, the feds do? What role do they have to play, or are we all just on our own?
Well, it's kind of unfair to say, oh, well, if you were to ask me what were to happen, I mean, obviously, in terms of resources, right? The schools were the first ones to get cut when there's issues. And a lot of folks were talking about, the school districts are getting money because their economy is doing good and the state was doing good. But at the end of the day, we were still not at the level that we should be in our schools. So I think the first priority is, no matter what takes place, if the economy recovers and we do great, let's make sure that we are giving our schools the proper due in terms of resources. I know Governor Newsom was going that route before this whole thing happened, but even then we were still not there, right? So we had to look for every single nook and cranny to figure out how do we, support our kids when this came. And in regards to the latest issues of our Orange County Department of Education, again, that was also politicized, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had a panel which came in, which was kind of packed with charter school folks and packed with ideologically and the right folks who were pretty much saying like, oh, it's okay. Well, let's bring back the kids in person with no masks and no social distancing. And we were sitting there and scratching our heads until, people who were school board members knew that, okay, well, you know what? You could tell what you want. We, the local school district, is the one which is going to make the decision. But that did create a lot of hysteria, and
So why do you think they did that, Al? I mean, you're right. At the end of the day, the decision will be made at the district level. Why do you think the Board of Education interjected themselves in this manner, and basically it looked like from the very beginning we're going to basically weigh on the issue this way, and in fact they did?
Well, either one, they're really out of touch with what's going on in our local neighborhood schools, or they had an agenda, right? I mean, that the agenda also was driven by, I know I might get dinged for this because I actually work for the county board of supervisors, right? You had a bunch of people on the board who were kind of driving this whole narrative that let's open up everything, right? Let's go ahead and open up businesses, don't worry about it.
Right.
This whole thing is
no masks, no protective measures. Yeah, no masks, no protective measures. And that was prior to the Board of Education, correct? That was a decision done at the Board of Supervisors. Yeah, you're right.
And I think that kind of fueled some of the leadership there to take this and run with it, because I think that everybody thought driving a point home with schools coming back will kind of show that there's normalcy in the situation, right? So.
And let me ask both of your opinions here. Was that ideologically driven? A libertarian government can't tell me what to do. Everybody gets to make up their own mind. Every parent gets to decide what they want to do. Is it come from there, or is it come from a place of, hey, this is going to make the current people in power look bad, and therefore we have to minimize how this looks so that we, the supervisors, all the way up to the president, can stay in power here?
That's a loaded question, Paul.
I know, that's why I asked it. Because I wonder, I think there's some elements of both to it, but I think that if it was flipped, if the Democrats were all in power, would they be doing the same thing? Would they be just trying to minimize, no, we got this under control, it's no big deal, everybody go about your daily life, or would it be
Gentlemen,
totally different?
If you want to take that, that's fine. But I'm just going to say that, you know, regardless what that reasoning is, unfortunately, you know, it's almost like a cliche. Those who suffer are the kids,
Well,
and I think that
Always.
really is something that gets lost in the shuffle here. We're talking about people. It's almost the same insanity as when we talk about percentages. Like 132 or 138 people died that are Americans that passed away because of this, and somehow because it's 0.04%, whatever crazy math that you're doing, that makes it lesser an issue. Like, what if that one person out of the 138 was your mother, your father, your wife, your husband,
Right.
your daughter, right? Are you going to say, you know what? That's cool because, you know, it's only 0.04%. So I'm going to get over it right away. I mean, I'll see you guys around. I mean, like it is insanity. And in this particular case, it's even more vulnerable. It's like it's only the elderly that are dying. Really? My mother passed away in May. Okay, you're telling me that should be something that I'm okay with? My father's 84 and has dementia, and I have to worry about what I may be bringing into the house if I go outside. The elderly are dying, so that somehow makes it okay. Oh, the kids won't basically pick this up. They won't pass it on to their adult. I mean, really? Pink eye, flu, whatever, every season. But no, somehow COVID knows to behave itself so that it doesn't basically go into a kid and then get passed on to an adult. Right? That's the kind of smart virus that we're dealing with. It's insanity. And I have to wonder whether if it wasn't an election year, would we be dealing with this differently?
That's kind of what I was trying to get at with the point. You
Yeah.
know, is this just ideologically driven? One group of people wants individuals to make their own mind, and another group is okay if, you know, collectively we all enforce some rules and regulations. It's
What
the
do you
same.
think, Jose? You're sitting there chomping at the bit. I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you know, it's an interesting point that Paul's bringing up. That same libertarian, though, is imposes themselves on a woman's body and the woman's health. That same libertarian imposes on the ability of someone to not be frisked and stopped at the airport because they come from a Muslim country.
Yeah.
That same libertarian wants to see children in cages, their freedom taken from them with no crime being committed. Crossing the border without papers is not a criminal violation. It's a civil violation.
But it's my
Yeah.
body. Don't tell me to wear a mask.
Right.
My
But
body,
it's
my choice, no mask.
Yeah, it's my body, and don't make me shelter in place. I should go out and so I have the right to infect everybody else. And I think that's where I think that idea that is it an ideological thing doesn't quite work for me, at least. If people are honest, if they're being intellectually honest
Right.
about their ideology.
Somebody said on one of our other shows here that the world's turned upside down. Republicans for years have fought against abortion and concerned about unborn children, and yet they're okay with tons of people, old people, poor people, those other people dying. That's okay. The
So I
right to
think
life is limited in its concern about life.
Yeah, so I just think that what I say is I just think of somebody is benefiting from this chaos.
Yeah, right.
And you know, from things that I've seen and read, the stock market is still surging, it's still going.
Yeah.
The billionaire class of Jeff Bezos and these others, they're making billions more dollars because their industry is now, we're dependent on deliveries, we're dependent on these products.
Mm-hmm.
The
Jeff
communications
Bezos is at an
industry-
all-time high. He's never made more money because we're all using his service.
Well,
yeah.
Jose, you guys know the old adage, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Right.
Right, and so that's where I think of this great book by Naomi Klein called The Shock Doctrine, which is that exact point, but from a more a market-based, neoconservative, market-based ideological approach of never let a good crisis get in the way of you plundering the government for its money and the people for its money. So you got to think about how much money telecom stocks are going to make in this, because we're all school districts now are depending on folks going distance learning. And so while this whole class is benefiting tremendously, working people are fighting amongst each other, right?
Yeah, right.
And certainly I don't think we're immune from that.
But it's not
and
a
I-
sustainable thing, right? I mean, we're talking about this, and this conversation so far is somewhat more laced with politics and ideological positions. But at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, there's basic things going on here, right? You got people that are unemployed. You got people that are out of work. You got people that basically are sheltering in place by choice because they're afraid and they don't know what else to do, right? I mean, there's a post-traumatic stress disorder almost going across this whole country, and at some point, the human condition has a breaking point. So it is not a sustainable situation. So are we just saying that this is an end run game for November to see whatever we can grab between now and then whatever happens, because we still have to deal with how do we educate our kids. We got to still deal with the fact that people are going to have to somehow sustain themselves or pay for something, right? I mean, at some point, out of sheer desperation, people are going to start taking higher and higher risks, whether it's with themselves alone or with their children. And this goes, in my mind, goes beyond any kind of political anything. This is just human conditions here. Like somebody was telling me, well, you're advocating for masks because you're making money on having a mask company. And I said, you know what? Just take this for a minute. If you're a business person and you're standing there telling me I'm not going to allow masks into my business because it's an ideological thing, and I look at your market and 75% of your market is scared to death and they need something to reassure them about coming into your business so that they can feel safe enough to spend their little money because discretionary spending just went down the toilet with 40 million people unemployed. Guess what? You're being a stupid business person if you don't understand that a mask is linked directly to your economic recovery. Like, forget about even the moral situation. Okay.
And how about lawsuits later if their employees get sick
insurance
and they
companies denying your claims, raising your rates because you're practicing against recommended regulations from the state. I mean, everybody. It's where did we become so against our own best interest?
That's the question's been
Well-
going on through my mind for years now here.
Well, I don't know if I think that what we've learned here is, and it's the opportunity as well from the other side of it, right? It's when the schools, when Al and the other trustees and the school leaderships made that decision, we all celebrated it because, I mean, oh my gosh, if Disneyland had to close, then shoot, we got to close the schools too. And I think that's what made it serious. People were not really taking it serious until Disneyland closed, in my opinion. Like, oh my gosh, if Disney's closing, they never close. It must be real. It took, going back to Al's point, it took away the politics of it because Disneyland's not political. It's just fun. So I think that when I look at it from that perspective, it just really becomes the opportunity to see how the inequities that we see on the day-to-day basis, that so many of us are trying to bring consciousness to, but get drowned out by a marketplace and this idea of a bootstrap and individual determination, that we're on our own. But now we know if every kid now has to learn from home, that's not gonna promote any kind of equity, because some kids have the 1 gigabyte fiber optic connection to broadband and can afford to also connect to private tutors at home, and their parents are highly educated at home,
Right.
And they have their own room to then plug into school, where in Anaheim, downtown Anaheim, West Anaheim, North Anaheim, Santa Ana, that kid is having to share that 1-bedroom apartment with 4 other students, their siblings or another family that lives with them, in a DSL connection, which is super slow nowadays. So we're now beginning to see how the digital divide is very real, on very real terms. Schools have for years been shifting towards more technology use at home. So have cities. And so when we say, why aren't kids plugging in the way that they should? Well, there's the divide. Now we're seeing it for real. So I think there's an opportunity too to see how our infrastructure, as we developed it, both for education, but also for business and entrepreneurship even, is really stifled by this inequity that has been there.
So
for a
remind
couple of
everybody
years.
what the Orange County Board of Education recently did and how our school districts like the Anaheim Union High School District reacting to it.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'll
tell us what the Board of Education does, because they
yeah.
don't run the school. I'm still confused why we even have a
Well,
Board of
right.
Education.
We're here. We're here. We can sit here, and over a couple of drinks or whatever, talk about all the stuff almost in the rear view mirror, right? But we still have to tomorrow do something
Right.
about what's coming.
Right.
And one of the pressing things is the school year starting.
And so, what is the Orange County School Board of Education do, and what did they recently do on this question of reopening schools? What do they do, and what did they do?
Well, that's what mind-boggling is. Like, I was taking a lot of calls from folks who are saying like, hey, want to make sure that you guys are not opening the school because Orange County Department of Education said so. And I'm like, they're not the authority. I go back to talking about, your local school. Matter of fact, right before I got on the call after giving the wash to my little kid, that was one of the calls that I had to make.
Right.
Because I got a call on my official line where, somebody from Fullerton left me a message saying, hey, just want to let you know that, we heard that the Orange County Department of Board of Education made this choice to open schools. This is crazy. You need to make sure that you let them know. So they're telling me as a aide to a Board of Supervisor member, they're telling me you need to make sure that you tell the Board of Education that that's not what you need to do. So I had to educate them and telling them that, look, your local school district is the one that makes the decision. The Orange County Department of Education or Board of Education, they have the authority to they approve budgets. They approve our local accountability plans, right? They try to do programs and achievements for Orange County. Those are the things that they do. So they have no direct authority over the other school districts in Orange County. It is so sad that they had to do this to grab headlines, which I think they didn't. If you saw, I think it was today in the morning, I read that, one of our Board of Supervisor members had to walk his whole involvement with this back by issuing a statement saying that, I was never part of that whole white paper thing and I was not advocating that, because they knew that it was backfiring with parents and community members.
Yeah. So why would they
just to
come?
let you know what Anaheim Union High School District did.
Yeah.
We actually the 8-hour meeting that we had was that we decided that we were going to go 100% distant learning for the fall. And partly because we as a school district not only knew our local communities, like we knew the hotspots which were in Anaheim, which were going to be a big issue for us if we were to open up the school and tell kids to come in. We're not only putting the kids' lives in danger, but the families and then our employees, our teachers, our staff members were going to be on campus. So actually UCI did, we requested UCI to come in and present today to our board members. And as a board, we looked at science and data, and then we made that choice because we knew that we needed to do the right thing for our kids and our community. So
Are you able to share, Al, what came out of that UCI reporting?
Yeah, I know Jose will talk a little bit more about, I'm sure he'll talk about the Anaheim data too. One of the biggest things that struck me today was the fact that it takes 3 days to actually, figure out if a person was in front of you asymptomatic. It actually takes about 3 days to figure out if that person was actually infected or not. Now, by this time, you've infected a whole bunch of people. Now, compounded, which I mentioned today during the board meeting, was our Orange County testing, right?
Yeah.
When you test, it takes about a week to get your results back. So even if you didn't know, now you're not isolating yourself, you're going on campus, they gave some numbers. I actually have it with me, which is basically said if you were to bring in 30,000, let me just look it up. I think I have it with me here, which was pretty mind-boggling to me, and that's why I saved it. Is that if a school district has 30,000 students, they expect that 900 of them will be infected on this particular day. So they're pretty much giving
On any given
data
day,
for
there's
us, right?
900
Any given
infected
day.
kids running
And
around.
if a
Yeah.
school district had 1,200 teachers and 1,000 staff members, we expected that 36 teachers and 30 staff members will be infected, right? So those are numbers that we as a district don't want to take responsibility for, one, because we're putting a whole bunch of people at risk, which, you know, relates to lawsuits and then insurance factors.
Well,
But
it also relates to loss of resources, Al. Like those
Right.
people that are pushing for the fact that we need to get our kids back in school because we need to get them in front of teachers and all this stuff. If you lose teachers, you are undermining that thing that you're trying to achieve. Those teachers are now gone. That you don't have those resources.
Right, right. And then, you know, and then the other part is to put it in context. I think one of the things that I was afraid of is that we did have, unfortunately, we did have parents and some teachers who were actually sending us emails and phone call messages saying like, hey, you know, we want you to bring back our students back on campus and go full blown in-person, what do you call it, classroom. And I actually pulled up some data while the presentation was going on, because the Orange County Healthcare Agency recently put out data about 0 to 17 in terms of age group who were infected by city. Anaheim had like 309, right? And you had like I mean, I'll just go off, like Fullerton had 72, Gardner had 78, Orange had 83. So just imagine these kids, if they were to go into a campus, look at the number of people that they will be infecting, right? So those are the things that I think once you put it in that context. In Santa Ana had 415. They had one of the largest school districts in Orange County. Just imagine bringing these kids back.
Well, and we talk about numbers like they're static, right? Like we talk about numbers like it's just a number, but we don't talk about the rate of increase, right? And over what duration of time. Like, you know, Jose, you what's the situation in Anaheim? I mean, just overall, I mean, what's the spread of coronavirus in terms of just
Today,
cumulative
right
cases?
now, on the
Yeah,
ground,
like,
what are we looking at?
or
Yeah.
over a certain period of time? I mean, is it, oh, it's not a big deal, it's just a small number? What is it like?
It's there's a reason they call us the Orange County. They're calling us the Florida of California.
California, yeah.
We took the same approach Florida did as a county. So on June 23rd, our last council meeting, actually I should say on June 12th, Al and I were part of a conversation that we learned for the first time the zip code data, which schools have been asking for, cities, some of us in our cities have been asking for, to know exactly what are there hotspots in the county that are disproportionately getting hit by this pandemic more than others. We know that that's just how pandemics are. Like you said, Rod, they're not smart viruses. They just jump wherever the conditions are right. And there are 3 conditions we know that are right for this virus. That it's transmitted by people, person to person, who are in close quarters and who aren't covered. And so what we had is a county and cities, frankly, who are very slow to respond to this. And so the cities that have the highest overcrowding, that have multiple families living together, that have a high proportion of essential workers, Anaheim and Santa Ana have, that's basically where the workers of Orange County tend to live, the essential workers of Orange County that serve the rest of the county. So on June 12th, we were given some data at the city level and by zip code. And at that time, Anaheim had 1,300 cases of COVID, June 12th, a month ago. By July 14th, we were at 4,500, literally 4 weeks later. Our city council was given reports, and our city reports it every day, the counts, but they don't put any urgency to it. On June 23rd, which was our last council meeting of June, we had 2,000 cases. We had our next council meeting was yesterday, or Tuesday, July 14th. Literally 3 weeks, it went from 2,000 cases to 4,500. The hardest hit zip codes are 92805, 92804, 92802, which are the highest concentration of crowded housing, low-income workers, and children. So when we talk about where is this growing, and Santa Ana is even worse. So where is it growing is initially we heard of these cases in March being in Newport Beach, Laguna Beach. Those were the first ones because of the demographics, older, right? But they quickly resolved that, very quickly. They acted. Santa Ana and Anaheim, because the data was partially hidden, but also the cities, frankly, didn't put enough pressure to get it done, to get the information we needed. Um, we were more focused on economic recovery and not so much on health recovery, and that takes it all back to why is this playing out the way it is? Is, you know, when you're in a tourist-based economy the way Orange County is, and in a political environment of individualism and freedom, mix that with the economy, then we don't want people to be afraid to come to Orange County. We don't want people to be afraid to come back to Disney. So frankly, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, we suppress the numbers and we commodify people, like you're saying, Rod. We commodify them. We become indifferent to
Yeah, but
who's getting hit.
I mean, we are absolutely must be the speaking of learning, the least able to learn from history. Not one condition, name one situation where that approach has been taken that was sustainable over a long period of time and it didn't come back and basically bite whoever did it in the you know what. I mean, it is absolutely, it's like sweeping stuff underneath the rug. Okay, you can sweep the stuff underneath the rug as long as you want and ignore that it is there. At some point you will trip over the pile that is now underneath the rug. You want to deny that there's a problem because you don't want it to affect the tourism industry in Orange County. I get it. You don't want to basically admit that there's an issue and quietly try to basically maintain some sort of increased hygiene regulations and protocols because you don't want to scare people away, right? Well, there's a couple of problems with that approach, especially with this situation. It is not a regional problem. It is a global pandemic, right? So even on the fear factor, even if you're sitting in a place where there's no issues, you would be afraid because when am I basically potentially going to be exposed? It's all around me. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm in a gated community, so it's not going to get to me. I'm gonna cul-de-sac because then it's not going to get to me. Like, we don't even know enough. Like, 1 minute it's particles, okay. The next minute it's transmitted by air. The third minute is no. If you're at the beach, the sun will kill it. You know, July comes around, it's just going to miraculously disappear, just like that, right? There is not even. We have built such distrust into the system that we can't even trust what somebody's telling us. I mean, this is the saddest situation.
Nor are we
because
being
there's no
told
end in sight.
one consistent message. I go back to my first point here. How do you guys coordinate, or do you try? Does Anaheim Union High School have one set of facts and one set of conclusions? Does the city of Anaheim have another? Does the city of Newport Beach, or does the city of San Clemente, or the county, or the feds, or the state? Everybody seems to have a totally different set of numbers and a totally different conclusion. Is there no coordination between different districts and entities here, or are we all on our own?
Well, I think part of it is, right, we all rely on one entity in terms of getting the numbers for COVID, which is Orange County Healthcare Agency, right? They're the driving force in terms of getting the numbers out. But they did at the initial stages, again, because this is something new, right? Everybody had to get the whole issue wrapped around in terms of how to handle this. Initially, they were kind of fumbling a little bit, but I think eventually they got to a point where they're getting things done. Now they're issuing numbers, but part of it is you have to have community organization putting pressure, right? Now, Jose knows this, and I know, Jose, you should probably talk a little bit about the situation in Anaheim, right? At the end of the day, Latino Health Access, which was an organization which put pressure to kind of look at the disaggregated numbers in terms of zip codes. That allowed us to have a more vibrant communication in Anaheim. Now, Jose, being a council member, was driving this point at a council meeting, right? Talking about, hey, what are we doing as a city to shine a light, and not only shine a light, but actually he's the one who's shining the light, but to bring resources to the table to support our community, to make sure that we stop this virus from spreading. But there needs to be leadership, leadership to be taken in terms of how to handle it. Anaheim Union, I mean, we partnered with Jose to make sure, and then our board of supervisors, Supervisor Doug Chafee's office, we made sure that we came to the table to give the necessary support to come as a partner, to partner together to provide the support. City still was not taking a leadership. The mayor was still not taking the leadership, right? We were, jokingly calling, not jokingly, but rightly calling Jose Moreno the de facto mayor of Anaheim because he took lead in making sure that he not only put the shining light on the issue, but called the school districts on a conference call meeting and then said, like, look, this is an issue. I'm kind of giving you FYI, but let's kind of get to the table and roll up our sleeves and try to help our communities, right? He brought like faith-based organizations together. I think part of it is you got to have leadership, which will jump in and not listen to this whole hyperventilating right-wing agenda, but to make sure that we're listening to science and facts and work based off of that.
Well, it's all distractions, Al. I mean, at the end of the day, action must be taken. Okay, there are people losing lives. There are people basically losing livelihoods, right? I mean, this tribalistic situation, regardless of which side it is, to be honest, it's irrelevant. You have a situation that requires a solution. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The one thing that is an ingredient that is so lacking and so missing is this not only failed leadership, okay, and it's an abdication of leadership. Failed leadership requires somebody to try and fail. Abdication of leadership means I don't even try. Okay, let's call it what it is. This isn't failed leadership. This is an abdication of leadership. Okay, if you're not interested in the primary responsibility that comes with that position, don't be in it. And this is, and it's not. I'm not picking on the even regionally. I mean, this is just this is worse pandemic than the one we're dealing with called coronavirus. Is this pandemic of abdication of leadership across the whole spectrum?
So if we had another crisis, if we had an earthquake, the feared earthquake we've lived with all our lives here, and it was a big one, and buildings fell down, and freeways collapsed, and infrastructure, water, we couldn't get water for a while, or electricity, or whatever. Wouldn't we come together quickly? What would be different about that? Would there be
photo op? Maybe
would there be people still saying, no, go about your daily life, or open the school? There's nothing. The schools are safe. The buildings are safe. No problem. Whatever. I find that hard to believe. Is this a map of how we're going to handle every crisis going forward?
Jose, what are you guys doing in Anaheim? I mean, right now there's some serious issues.
Yeah, that's so you have an abdication or failure at the federal level. Okay, the state was going really strong, in my opinion, and I think the governor undimmed it too quickly because of a lot of pressure. Now I think he regrets that. But regardless, that's why you have local leadership. You have local elected school boards who can shield you from the nonsense of the levels up, right? They at least create a buffer zone. Same thing with city councils. When we got the data a month ago, in fact, when the emergency was declared for Anaheim on March 10th, we met in a special meeting to declare the emergency. I urged, and so did Councilman Barnes, the mayor and the city manager at the time, to appoint a special commission, a subcommittee of the council members across strengths that we have in education, community, human services, business, and convene with stakeholders to figure out a citywide effort to take this on together. Just ignored it, summarily ignored it, asked for it again, summarily ignored it. We asked for updates on data. We're getting good updates, almost like a very calm thing. Oh, we're on it, we're monitoring. But it turns out monitoring doesn't mean you're taking on the challenge. You're just basically reporting back, hey, we're dying. Hey, everybody, we're dying. Hey, we're dying a little more today, everybody. And you sit there, and somehow that got interpreted as leadership, where like information is not leadership. Information is the first step towards figuring out how.
Leadership is what you do with the information.
But let me, because I know we're pressing on time, but let me just give you a very pragmatic thing of why what Al and the trustees did is so critical that gets lost across ideological lines, Paul.
Please, because
So
we're
imagine-
all confused. Why everybody,
I'm
nobody
just-
can.
I'm very pragmatic. That
Right.
this is just undeniable. That let's say we went with what the Board of Education did. Let's go ahead and open up, and even if it was with masks and whatnot, you start school. I think the plan was for kids to go to school 1 or 2 days a week, right? That was the initial plan for most school districts. A kid comes to school. They're being tested as they come in through temperature tests. So they're interacting with 3 or 4 administrators, right? They're touching 3 or 4 people or being touched. They go to a classroom. There's 15 kids in the classroom. That was going to be the limit. With a school teacher. If you're a middle school, you're talking about 6. You're going to 6 different classrooms as a child, right? Let's say a child gets tested positive. Under guidelines of the CDC and the state, you then have to quarantine that child for 14 days. Or, well, they're sick. Who knows how long it'll take. But everybody that came into contact or exposed to that child has to be quarantined for 14 days.
Yep.
So now you have schools are opened up. This kid tests positive. All 15 kids in every one of that child's classrooms have to be quarantined. All 6 teachers that interacted with that child have to be quarantined.
Right.
Now you got to have 6 substitutes to cover that teacher. 36 substitutes to cover 6 teachers per section. Then the administrators have to be quarantined. Your principal, with my wife, would not have to stay home and not be able to run the school. The kids exposed, their parents, when they went home, have to be quarantined, which are the essential workers. Now you don't have workers out in the grocery stores and maybe even first responders. So that's why the idea that that schools should open, and then if we see a flare up, close up again, that's too late. Right now, the most pragmatic thing to have done, and again, Al and the board and superintendent and their staff, the best thing to have done was to close down, because it just takes one child to be sick. That then, under guidelines, everyone around them has to be quarantined.
Well, no different, Jose, than the restaurant situation. I mean, we don't have to look very far. Okay, the reopening of the restaurants and the bars. Forget about the bars. I'm just take that out of the equation, right?
But
just
let me
the
interrupt you, Rod.
Wait a minute, I'm Irish. Don't forget about the
Yeah.
bars here. Okay.
Yeah, but let me interrupt you on that, because it's not the same. We're not required to go to bars. You're not required to
Yeah.
drink virtually. We're not depending as a society that you're able to drink. We're depending on kids learning. So if the school, by the second week, a kid tests positive, then we have to go back to what happened in March. One day to the next, everybody has to learn to teach virtually, has to learn how to stay home.
Right.
You're disrupting the system, right? So I think the best thing to do, which is what the district did, is it shows we're going to just go virtual, period. And we're all going to work on that. That cannot be disrupted. That cannot be interrupted. And then through that, hopefully the city and our corporate partners can be a part of a solution to assure that kids have high quality bandwidth for Wi-Fi. So I met with Angels Baseball today. I'm going to meet with some of the telecom companies, hopefully with Disney, and get our city COVID dollars to work with the schools to be able to somehow provide citywide Wi-Fi, so that all the workers who got to stay home to work and have to depend on a Wi-Fi system, all the kids who got to learn from school, who got to learn now at home, sharing one bandwidth at home isn't going to work. That we can have a powerful enough bandwidth system citywide that's now our street. That's now our streets, and our freeway is the bandwidth. So hopefully we can work on that as a solution, so that kids have high quality, uninterrupted distance learning. And the community services component is I'm asking our city to get together in some community conversations about the kids. Normally, when the schools are done at 2:30, from 7:30 in the morning till 2:30, they're the kids of the schools, right? They're school kids, they're students. 2:30, they're community kids. We transitioned to us. So Al has been instrumental in getting joint use agreements, so that now we can open up schools to be part of community services. So what do we do now? How does the city provide community services to help the kids develop in community youth development?
Because there's nobody at home to watch the kids, because they got to go back to work, and if they don't go back to work, they can't afford food and shelter.
Am I missing something here? If I eliminated the fact that I am under duress in dealing with a condition called a pandemic right now, all the stuff that we're talking about are enhancements, improvements. Like, actually, these are things that are not going to go away the minute that this is over. As far as a medical crisis, we will still have wider bandwidth. We will still have more accessibility and more equity in terms of education. We are, it's almost like we're fighting against things that are improvements that will be an outcome that will last longer than this pandemic. Am I missing this? Is it,
You hit it right there, Rod. It's about time after 7 visits to your show.
It took him a while.
you haven't been listening then.
It does not, it does not pass me that every time I've brought up economic analysis, Paul, you change the conversation.
Yeah.
The economics of this is that right there, Rod.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
not-
and because
Jose, let me just share something for you from my perspective. Paul is going to let us run a little bit longer. I don't care.
Not too much, so I gotta-
I'm dominating the show.
okay, just a couple more minutes. All right.
Okay, you know what? There's no friggin' leadership. I'm showing leadership. So, all right, but the thing about it is this, right? Do you know that every design of, I mean, just putting my designer hat on for a minute. Do you know that the way that we design bathrooms, and I'm not even talking about commercial bathrooms, okay? The way we design bathrooms, the way we have sanitation and hygiene, the way that when you go to your bathroom at home, whether you go to some hotel or whatever, do you know that all the materials and all the ways that we basically interact in that environment is basically a result of lessons learned during friggin' crises, health crises? You know that the materials that we put in our kitchens, the materials we put in our homes, those are all products that came out of the medical and hospital side of things. The synthetic countertops, the splashes of 4 to 5 inches.
We didn't make them for the kids.
You know,
Okay.
the tile, the need for tile against the drywall, so that we don't basically have, you know, piss basically soaking into the drywall material, right? All of this stuff that we basically take for granted as basically a measure of quality of life came out of how we as a human being, as a country, as a nation, as a group of people, sorted out and dealt with crisis.
So that's the thing. I think what we can learn through this is there's 2 paths. Either, as you said, people will just take the opportunity of a crisis and make their profits and just keep compounding the inequities that currently exist, right?
Yep.
Because those with capital can then are able to purchase the materials necessary to compound the inequities for they make. Or we go the other path. If we build a bandwidth, a city Wi-Fi bandwidth that creates a digital equity question in the city of Anaheim.
Right.
If we now understand how important health is, we now can provide healthcare to everybody. 75,000 people in the city of Anaheim do not have access to healthcare today, 20%. And those are the folks that are not going to report that they're positive for COVID because they won't have a job and they'll lose any healthcare they might have, right? So maybe this teaches us that, hey, it might be important to make sure that everybody has a guaranteed basic quality healthcare so that they're not afraid to report themselves because of the cost of medical bills. So this is actually the path we can take. Out of this, we can actually build a more equitable infrastructure. And we now know that the more inclusive and equitable you are, the actual more profit you'll make, ironically, right? Because as a
So you're
result,
saying that
there's more people.
if we use this crisis properly, we can come out of it better on the other side, 1, and 2, that there's an economic interest to make things better. All we hear is the economic cost. It's going to cost. It's going to cost. It's going to cost.
It's going to cost. It's going to cost based on the economics, you know, not the economics that are opportunities in front of you.
Because it would seem like the argument you're making could be very receptive in the business community and the conservative community, and yet it's not, because all they focus on what's all that going to cost to create Wi-Fi, to give things away, to healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. It's a cost.
Yeah, but those same industries, the successful ones, know that they depend heavily on research and development, and they invest in that,
Right.
because they know it's going to come back. Now they've gotten a free ride because the research universities, publicly funded, have provided that research and development for them, right? And now they don't want to pay for it. So the profitable part of this, the benefit is, imagine an entrepreneur who doesn't have a lot of resources for capital. They now can have bandwidth, and a lot of companies that now can depend and build on entrepreneurs through the internet, through the web. Well, now we'll see a lot more youth entrepreneurs looking at that and being able to access that because we're providing the infrastructure.
But you're stepping on some special
But-
interest
but-
toes.
but-
Verizon
wait.
wouldn't love you doing free Wi-Fi in the whole city here, because then no one would pay for Verizon.
You know what? I don't know that I agree with that, Paul, because I think it depends on the myopicness or the helicopter view. Even at a corporate level, if you're looking at this and you're thinking forward, you're not thinking history is in a moment. It is not a snapshot. It is a reel. It's a unfolding story, right? If you look at this, and I'm going to again say, never let a good crisis go to waste. But let a good crisis go to waste could actually be a power for good. Because to not let a crisis like this go to waste in that we can learn and improve things, okay, is a power for good. Enhancing situations, improving things. You know, if we apply the same, I mean, I use the hygiene and what have you, right? If I apply the same thought pattern to resistance, okay, the streets of New York are full of filth and soil and dirt and horse manure and God knows what. And you know what? I don't want to change what I know because, you know, all the dirt and all that stuff may be causing disease, but why would I want to clean up the streets? Why would I basically want to empower the community to have a healthier lifestyle? This is a moment in time that is really going to determine a lot of things. And if you want to be an opportunistic political animal, even in this moment, you could either make your career or you can sink your career. And
So-
it requires a show of leadership.
So
I mean,
last question. I'm going to show some leadership. I got to wrap this up here. Why Jose's? He really cut to the quick there.
he always does.
He makes me. I'm going to have to go home and think about this because he says every time he switches to economics, I switch the topic. I probably do,
You do.
because economics is boring. We're all operating from emotion. I'm scared. I'm angry. I'm frightened.
It's all about the Benjamins, Paul. Didn't you know that?
And that's what we're reacting emotionally. And when people are wound up emotionally, you can't say, here are the facts. The facts are, if I say I'm afraid and you say there's nothing to be afraid of, Paul, here's the facts. You're telling me my feelings aren't valid. And you can't tell me my feelings aren't valid. My feelings, and I think we've been filled with fear. We've been filled with anger. We've been filled with confusion. We've been filled with party allegiance, confusing messages from everybody here. And the whole world doesn't know what to think or do. And I agree. We should just look at this rationally. We should look at the numbers. We should look at it economically. But instead, we're all reacting like little kids.
You know, people listening to the show probably get more confused than when they first started, too,
Yeah.
right? But let me just I question because I got 4 people right here, and let's just.
But
we
Jose
are
hit a
what?
point there.
What-
You
what are we-
hit a
what are we-
nerve there, right?
July 16th right now, July 16th, 2020, right?
Right.
We've all been in the trenches of this for 5 months, okay? Without rosy-colored glasses on.
Let me
Okay.
take mine off. Okay.
Yeah, take yours off.
All right.
How do we feel? Are we feeling optimistic? I mean, realistically optimistic? Are we feeling like there is no end to this downward spiral? I'm not starting with you, Paul. You can shoot I want to start with Al because there's this situation with kids and schools, and it's very much of a timely situation. How are we feeling, gentlemen? Are we feeling not opportunistic? Are we feeling optimistic? Are we feeling that this is a paradigm shift that eventually will be for the better? Or are we feeling that we are just in the mire?
And compare it with how you're feeling with what kind of response you're getting from your constituents.
No. I want to hear about the
I know,
individual feeling.
but I want to hear how they feel, and then does it match what their constituents are saying or what their feedback they're getting?
See, individually, matter of fact, there was a pointed question because last night I was having this conversation with my wife. You know, she was sitting there and like scrolling through news and just going like, what are we doing with all these numbers in Anaheim? You know, how are we going to fix this? And she literally was asking me about it because we were actually having a conversation about what Jose was doing, right? In terms of zip code and how he was working on these things. And what I said was this: look, we always have to be optimistic because that's one thing that drives you as a person. And that, at least for me, I always am very optimistic, which keeps me driving. Number 2, I always take a look at what's in a sphere of influence that I could make a difference, right? Me as a school board member, me as a staffer or a supervisor, what can I do to increase or improve the situation that's at hand right now? So
you as a father,
that's
you
how
as a neighbor, it
Right.
even goes down to that level, yeah.
Exactly, and that's how I look at things. And once you put that context on, I think it's easier to look for the next day and what we could do to kind of help your neighbors out and help your school community out. One thing that I'm very proud of is that, look, we looked at this crisis, like you said, we looked at this crisis and we have 120 kids. Although this is virtual now, 120 kids are going to be health ambassadors talking about and educating about COVID-19 in their communities across our district. So we are making sure that, people know what this crisis is all about, and people know that where to go get the information, right? So we're training 120 kids who are going to be ambassadors, health ambassadors, pretty much. That's going to be huge. So we're going to look for opportunities like that, and trying to improve the situation. When Jose came to me and asked about the whole, hey, as supervisor working for the supervisor's office, what can you do? We did what we could from our office, right? Making sure that we contact healthcare agency and say like, hey, how are we coming to the table? What kind of resources are we bringing? So that's what, in the end, individually, I am pretty optimistic, but as a community, I think once we all get together and people start looking at what everybody is doing, it's going to be a very good way to move forward. Yes, in a few bites.
He wants to come
There
on.
you go.
He wants to tell you his opinion here.
Al, let me, Jose, before you jump in, let me just say something because relevant to the supervisor situation. I found it very much a sort of a sad waste of time. Because when this first started, the decision was no mask, no mandatory thing. In fact, I will say it out loud and in public right here is I believe the Board of Supervisors of Orange County basically owes a public apology to Dr. Nicole Quick, because that was an absolutely hideous way of dealing with her and not having her back. And I know that that's a broad brushstroke, but that is something that requires a remedy. They owe her a public apology. The thing about it is where I'm saying it was a sad waste of time and energy. Is the first initial reaction was no masks, no mandate, no nothing, right? Then it gets shut down from the state, and all of a sudden we're amending the situation. Now we're saying, okay, whatever you want to call it, highly recommended, whatever. And the minute she was gone, and how dare she basically make it a mandated situation, we watered down the language. Then within less than a week or 10 days, we are now basically being slapped by the state, and now we're changing the language, right? But here's where the reality really hit me. This week, we basically now are offering $1,000 grants to restaurants that are basically adhering to the guidelines. Okay? Couldn't we not have helped those restaurants 2 months ago had we actually got our heads out of our politicized thinking and actually thought about what would it be to be business friendly to these people that we're talking about the fact that we support, instead of worrying about whether they should be allowing face masks or not in there? Where did, all of a sudden we're giving $1,000 per location.
Well, Raad, I gotta plug in here for my boss, right? I know he's sometimes he's silent at the dais, but I'll tell you.
And which supervisor, for those that don't know, which supervisor do you work for?
Supervisor Doug Chafee, right?
Okay.
He is one of those people who thoughtfully asks questions to get everybody on the same page. But if you take a look at the Nicole Quick situation, right? He actually not only offered support for her, during that crisis, but he was pretty open in saying that. But unfortunately, when you have a majority which is kind of going the wrong way, one vote or one voice sometimes is not enough.
Trust me, Al. I'm not knowledgeable about who did what and where. I'm just trying to be basically avoid the sort of the quagmire of polarizing positions. But all I'm saying is, just as a business person who owns a restaurant, okay, I could have sure as hell benefited from some forward thinking that offered me $1,000 grant for my restaurant if I adhered to guidelines that basically were in the best interest of the health interest of the community 2 months ago. That would have probably, got me to do that, become more of a habit. My customers would have gotten used to it, and maybe we wouldn't have had to do rolling shutdowns. My point is, kind of compilation of what we're talking about. We got to step away from this motivation to make decisions that don't make sense, because there is opportunity here for things to improve because of this crisis.
Last word goes to Dr. Moreno. Tell us how you feel Are you
Yeah.
similarly optimistic like your friend Al? And how are your constituents responding? Because I know you track this stuff. What kind of
Yeah,
calls you
yeah.
getting?
But in saying that, Rod, we're always told the business people will always do the right thing for their business, and that means taking care of the customer. So why would they gotta get paid $1,000 to make sure that their customers are healthy? And that's where it all falls apart, right?
If
At the
that's
end,
what it, you know what, Dr. Moreno, if that's what it takes right this minute,
no, no, right,
and we
right.
have the means to do it, then
But that's what I'm saying. It shows that it's a fallacy to say that the business people will always do the right thing. That's the fallacy. For some reason, they chose not to require masks themselves, and look now they gotta be closed because they chose not to do the
Because
right
they were
thing.
scared that people
there
would
were good
react.
no there were examples of people that basically
There were.
individually decided to hold off and open later and wanted to make sure that their staff was, I'll give a plug to my friend Amar Santana from Vaca and Broadway and Laguna and stuff like that. There were people that did that. I'm sure
Yeah.
Bruno Suerto was probably in the different motivations as well. But yes, you're right. We can't assume that is the only
Right.
driving engine for this.
But that's the thing, right? That's the conflict is in a pandemic, if 95% of the people do the right thing, the 5% screw it up for everybody else. Because it's a bad apple question. The bad apples
Yep.
rot the good apples, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, to answer the question, Paul, I think I'm hopeful. I don't know if I'm optimistic, and I'm hopeful in this way that sometimes, as I think you all have already noted, either failed leadership or the absence of leadership begins to become more salient in people, and we as electeds and/or businesses show our true colors.
Mm-hmm.
So in Anaheim, what I'm cautiously optimistic about is the people of Anaheim have now seen who this city council, this mayor really values. They value the economics of the city, and that's not that it's not that important, but they do so at the expense of the health of the people of Anaheim. And we know that even in economics, if people aren't healthy, unless you're an insurance company, in the medical business, if people are not healthy, you cannot recover economically. You
Good
can't.
health is good business.
So
Good health is good business.
Anaheim, yeah, what I'm hopeful and cautiously optimistic is we have elections in November, both federal level, state level, and at the local level, and they'll see that when Anaheim decided to do an economic recovery plan of $15 million, it gave $6.5 million to a tourism bureau to promote a resort that was closed indefinitely. While people were on food lines, unemployment lines, schools trying to provide technology to kids, having to stretch their budgets, our community services budget completely decimated. So I think where I'm hopeful is that this now again takes off the veil of where and who is interested in the actual people, be it the student, the kids, the teachers, in the school district context, or in a city, the residents. And this is true for all cities. You also could see which cities really care about their people and which cities care more about the economic drivers of their city. Again, they're not mutually exclusive, but you can't drive your economy if your people are sick and if people are afraid to come to your city. Also, where we chose to use our emergency dollars and our care dollars will say a lot. And are we going to protect renters? Are we going to protect property owners of duplexes? Mom and pop property owners who depend on that rent for the retirement. We should restore them as well. But I think for me, my hope comes in what the school district just did, and that's why for us through our office, it was important to have the schools on the front line of this with the county and the testing program. Is at the end of the day, our kids are unfiltered, our kids are unapologetic, our kids are courageous, and they will get their parents to operate more healthy. They will get their parents to socially distance. If not just directly telling them through the ambassadors that I was talking about, but the parents out of fear for their kids will then socially distance, right? So that's where I'm hopeful, cautiously optimistic that the millennial group and the Gen X group that is being hit hard, 52% of all COVID cases in Orange County are in that millennial Gen X group, that they will see how they've been failed because yeah, we allow them to go out and have a good time at their bars, but now they're suffering the consequence.
Warren
And-
Buffett famously said, "You don't know who's swimming naked until the tide comes out." Maybe the tide has come out.
There you
We're
go.
going to see a lot of people
There you
swimming
go.
naked. Introduce your son there who wants to be on camera so badly
Oh, the
here.
Prince of Anaheim.
That's Arham. He's wanting to go to the pool, right?
Okay. Say,
Wait, I think
Right
I-
now because I don't have my swimming pants. My sister does.
Well, you need to go get them from your sister.
exactly. And what's his name? What's his name? What's your son's name?
Arham.
Arham. Say hi, Arham. Okay. Anything you want to say to the world out here? Everybody's meeting you for the first time. Anything you want to tell the world about all this? It's time to go to the pool. That's what he wants to say.
That's what he wants to say. You know, Paul, let me.
So to close, Paul, is I'm hopeful because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people know we need healthcare. We need a strong information superhighway for everybody,
Yeah.
and we just need strong attention to hygiene.
You know, the one thing that
Bring us
COVID
home.
has
Wrap
done-
it up.
Okay, well, the one thing that COVID has done, I mean, it's very clear to me, is that we were heading for a slowdown in the economy. Everybody you ask, you'll say that that's where we're heading at the end of the year.
Overdue.
We've been talking about discrepancies and inequalities across socioeconomic levels. We've talked about even with the toll road, like, that there's economic discrimination that happens with the fees that are being charged. We've been talking about all of this, right? The fascinating thing, and I'm a student of history, the fascinating thing about this when I look at the pandemic, at COVID, is that it did not basically necessarily initiate anything new. What it did is it accelerated. It exposed, okay? It made it much more difficult to ignore, right? Because it made things very fundamental, right? Food, shelter, economic realities. The internet is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. It needs to be looked at as a policy situation. Distance learning, it's a little bit of a kind of a comical thing for me, is that at the beginning of the year, the state of California basically talked about a slowdown on distance learning. And within 2 months, everybody was distance learning, right? I mean, any way you want to look at it, it's kind of comical. And here we are basically being forced with the reality that we need to provide this. And I think as a society, we will all benefit if we embrace the change, the evolution of what this is teaching us. Historically, every time we have resisted, the only thing that has happened out of that resistance is eventually it had to be given up. We could not sustain the resistance. It will be the same thing in this situation. I'm optimistic because every time I look at situations like this that we have faced as a human race, we have evolved, not necessarily by choice, but out of necessity. And this will be the same thing here. We can either lead the way and have some leadership that is willing to stand up and say, I am here, I'm willing to take the challenge, I'm willing to lead, and not be swayed by this and that is politically opportunistic or personally gaining, and look at what is best for all of us. And those people will rise. It happens every single time. People will shine. It happens every single
Well,
time.
two of them rose up and joined us here today for an hour and a half debate that
Yeah.
still leaves us as confused as we were. But
Jose mentioned it a little bit. For people that are in Gen Z, Zoomers, the people that are Gen Ys even, right? This is a very life-shaping moment that's going on.
yeah.
Those who did not graduate by walking through a commencement last year, right, when they came out of high school, this is something that will be in their psyche forever. This will shape who they are, whatever that shaping may look like. This is not a passing moment that we're going to forget. Some will forget it more than others, but this is a milestone for every.
Al's never going to forget if he can't take his kid to the pool. So we got to go.
And with that, I think we should let Al take us get this to the pool. Gentlemen, I appreciate you spending the time with us. It's always very passionate, that is for sure. And Jose's giving us a little clap again. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you guys.
Come back as we get closer, and let's find out if we've gotten any clearer as to the direction we're all headed here.
Thank you, Paul, for letting us run over. You're always very kind with the time.
Wow.
Gentlemen, thank you again. I appreciate you both. Keep doing the good work out there. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Raad Life radio show with your host and age explorer, Raad Ghantous, brought to you on the one and only OCTalkRadio.net. Join us again next week as we continue our journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older.